Good evening. Welcome to the Derry Town Council meeting of June 20th, 2023. Council Katsikouros, would like to lead us in the pledge?
Yes, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call. Council Chiricello.
I'm here.
Council Spencer.
Good evening.
Council Katsikouros.
Good evening.
Council Flood.
Hello.
Council Granassi.
Good evening.
Council McEachern. And good evening from the chair. We will go right into public forum. If someone would like to open that.
I'd like to make a motion to open the public forum.
Second.
Okay, a motion to open public forum by Council McEachern, seconded by Council Spencer. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Public forum is now open. If you wish to speak, please come up and do so. State your name and address for the record, please.
Mr. Chairman.
Seeing none, rise online,
Hold
Mr.
on, we
Chair.
have one.
And Owen, you'll let us know if anyone pops up online.
Indeed, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Good evening, Jim Dietzel, 11 Hunter Drive. The Kelson Plaza is on Ash Street Extension. Thank you.
That's it?
They were discussing it before. They couldn't remember the name of the...
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Move to close.
Seeing none, rise,
Second.
Mr. Chair.
All right. We have a
Brian made the motion.
motion to close by Council Chiricello, seconded by Council McEachern. On the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, public forum is now closed. Moving on to consent agenda. I'm going to split this up into two. So we have the 2369 approved non-public minutes from June 6, 2023. Those minutes are sealed. And we have agenda item 2370 approved minutes from June 6, 2023.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda 2369, 2370.
Okay, motion by Councilor McEachern, second by Councilor Katsikouros to move those two agenda items. On the motion, Councilor Chiricello.
Yes.
Councilor Spencer.
Yes.
Councilor Katsikouros.
Yes.
Councilor Flood.
Yes.
Councilor Granassi.
Yes.
Councilor McEachern. And I will abstain. I was not present for that. Moving on, consent agenda number 2371, ordinance 2023-003, amend Article 5 of the zoning ordinance to revert certain lots back to central business district. Agenda 2372, resolution 2023-045, to accept and expend unanticipated highway and bridge revenues from the state of New Hampshire. And consent number 23-73, resolution 2023-046, to approve a supplemental appropriation to purchase capital equipment and to authorize the execution and delivery of a master lease purchase agreement therefore.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda 2371, 2372, 2373.
Second.
Motion by Council McEachern to accept the agenda, seconded by Council Katsikouros. On the motion, Council Chiricello.
Yes.
Council Spencer.
Yes.
Council Katsikouros.
Yes.
Council Flood.
Yes.
Council Granassi.
Yes.
Council McEachern.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Motion carries.
Mr. Chair, just on that, just for the public's knowledge, all those public hearings will happen on July 11th.
Thank you. Good catch. Let me see here. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
I'd like to make a motion that we move one of the agenda items up before the chairman's report. And that would be item number, under new business, item number, hold on just a second.
2368.
Yeah, that one, 2368. We'd like to take that one up first.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to move an agenda item up on the docket from Council Chiricello, second by Council Granassi. On that motion, Council Chiricello,
Yes.
Council Spencer,
Yes.
Council Katsikouros.
Yes.
Council Flood.
Yes.
Council Granassi.
Yes.
Council McEachern.
Sure.
And the chair votes yes. So we'll be moving consent agenda 23-68, which is resolution number 2023-043, to appoint an electric aggregation committee. Mr. Fowler will be presenting on that. And that's listed under new business.
Good evening, Town Council. I was here at the June 6th meeting to discuss the plans that have been kicked off relative to initiating a energy aggregation, electricity aggregation plan that would be town-wide. We're working on this over the next couple of months. The survey has already gone out, but one of the key items that has to be accomplished is a community-wide plan has to be put together and presented to the town council and then approved by the New Hampshire PUC before the town can go out and solicit bids for electricity throughout the community. When I was here on June 6th, we talked a little bit about the enabling state statute, RSA 53E:6, and one of the items of feedback that I had received was to allow the council to look at how they wanted to constitute this committee. And coming out of that, a projected or a proposed bylaw came of this, where there would be 7 community members, 1 town council liaison, and then 1 DPW designee. Those would all be designated and appointed by the town council as a motion that you guys would make. And then the other part of this would be that this particular committee would sunset upon us initiating the full implementation of the plan. Other than that, everything else follows Robert's rules. You'd have a chairperson, a vice chair, and it would operate just like this governing body. So with that, if there's any questions, we've amended the staff report, and I believe there was a copy of the bylaws that were distributed, or the proposed bylaws.
Do we have any questions? Council Spencer?
I actually don't have a question. I just want to thank you. This was exactly when we talked last time. Great job on putting all the bylaws together. I just wanted to thank you for that work on doing that.
Oh, thank you.
Council Chercello?
Just a quick question on the bylaws. It says proposed, so who adopts those? Would it be us, or would it be the new committee?
I believe the way that this would work would be tonight, you have an opportunity to appoint your membership, and then at their first official meeting, they would go through and adopt those,
They would, okay.
propose and make those their rules.
Thank you.
Okay, Council McEachern?
Yeah, the only question I have is in the resolution, as I'm reading it, there's not a sunset clause. Do we need to add that in?
Sure can, sure.
Okay. Cool.
You know, I would suspect that the committee would sunset upon the delivery of the plan to the council.
And that's what I'll add some verbiage to that.
Yeah, and that is listed,
Time to read,
that is listed in the bylaws.
Bylaws, yeah,
but it should be in the
in the
resolution.
resolution. Okay. Council
I'll add it
Spencer?
in. I can add it in. It's not- I just want to check.
Just one other super small thing that I just wanted, and they would probably catch it before they adopted it as a group. In the mission, it reads as the second time it's mentioned, says election aggregation program. So
I
just
saw
as
that.
long as we change that, they don't want to get involved in that.
No, electricity is better than elections, I think.
Anything else? Anything else? All right. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to accept resolution number 2023-043, the following resolution to create an electric aggregation committee. Whereas section 5.1 of the town charter vests in the town council the powers of legislative and governing bodies, and whereas the town council received a presentation recently on the potential opportunities for citizens with the enactment of RSA 53-E, known as the Community Power Act, and whereas RSA 53E:6 authorizes the governing body to form an electric aggregation committee to develop a plan for the aggregation and program of its citizens, and whereas the completion of the final report would be the sunsetting of the committee, now therefore be it resolved in town council that the town council hereby creates an electric aggregation committee to investigate cost-saving opportunities for Derry residents and businesses, report back to the town council with its findings and recommendations, a resolution to take effect immediately upon passage, should it be adopted June 20th, 2023.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Council McEachern, second by Council Spencer. On the motion, Council Chercello?
Yes.
Council Spencer?
Yes.
Council Katsoukaris?
Yes.
Council Flood?
Yes.
Council Granessi?
Yes.
Council McEachern?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
All right, so having done that, let me just go back to my, we're gonna revert back to the chair's report, at which time I would, well, yeah, I'll do this first. The chairman's report, so we're gonna make appointments to the Electric Aggregation Committee. So with that, I move the appointment of Tom Carden, Michael Fodeman, Christopher Cox, John O'Connor, and Jeff Moulton to the Electric Aggregation Committee.
Second.
Okay, so been a motion by myself, seconded by Counsel Katsoukaris. On the motion, Counsel Cherichello.
Yes.
Counsel Spencer.
Yes.
Counsel Katsoukaris.
Yes.
Counsel Flood.
Yes.
Counsel Ganesi.
Yes.
Counsel McEachran.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. So that now leaves 2 openings, correct, Dave?
That's
So we have 5 of the 7, so if anyone's interested in that, please reach out. It's online, and reach out to Sheila Bodenrader at the Town Administrator's Office, and we can get you in there.
Who is our liaison?
We don't have that yet.
I was the net zero,
Congratulations,
so I
Ed.
can take this
Congratulations.
on.
Any objections? Anyone, you guys, no one wants to fight over it? Okay.
Beautiful.
Congratulations, Counsel Spencer.
Yeah,
Good luck.
thank you for volunteering.
No way.
You're gonna have some great people surrounding you with that.
Good group, I'm excited.
Who uses the most electricity?
All right, one more thing under the chair's report. We have been informed that our supervisor of the checklist, Dina Barassa, has given her notice as of effective June 30th, 2023, as she's moving out of town. The supervisor checklist are looking for anyone who's a Derry resident, a registered voter, and interested in elections and voter registration. Please email checklist@derrynh.org if you are interested or for further information. She's going to be a big loss to us. She's been very good for us over the years. We wish her well. Mr. Karen, Town Administrator's Report.
Thank you. Revenues are tracking well, which is fortunate since there's only 10 days left in the fiscal year. We expect all major sources to exceed our expectations when we built a budget about 15 months ago. As you're aware, the town in the charter has a tax cap, and it's configured based upon the change in the Northeast CPIU as of December 30th. Just an information item, that measurement last year was 6.1%, and the CPI has been tracking downwards steadily since then, and as of the end of May, it was 3.1%. So hopefully it's a good sign to return to normal times of modest inflation. On to the Central Fire Station. The alteration of terrain permits have been submitted to the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. That's about a 90 to 120-day window to get that permit issued. We're hoping it'll be issued around August 21st. So we'll be sending out early bid packages, particularly with the site, soon. And hopefully the site work will start in August. And the overall project we anticipate will be completed in November of 2024. Regarding the Exit 4A status, all that construction you see off of I-93, that's known as Contract A, which brings the project pretty much to the Londonderry Town line. That's about 25% complete, and they are anticipating it will be completed in the fall of 2024. That road will not be opened until Contract B is completed, and Contract B starts at our town line we share with Londonderry and goes just about to the intersection of Shenito and Bypass 28. And obviously, we can't have all the traffic coming off of 93 while Contract B is under construction. So Contract B is about 85% complete with design. We expect that the bids will go out in March, and we're expecting a summer start, and that's going to be over a 1-year completion process. It's a lot more difficult because we have to maintain traffic through the duration of that construction, which certainly slows things down. Regarding the development at Abbott Court, is that we expect that the developers are moving forward and that they'll be before the planning board sometimes in the fall. And we'll be having a massive development agreement between LMG and the town for the overall development of that town-owned land, either next meeting in July or most probably August 15th. And that completes my report for today.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Nope. All right. Moving along. Back to new business. Item number 2367, Resolution 2023-042, amend the intermunicipal agreement with the town of Londonderry to provide wastewater services. Deputy Director Tom Carrier. Good evening, Tom.
Good evening, councilors. We're here tonight to ask the council to amend the current intermunicipal agreement with the town of Londonderry for wastewater service to address some minor issues that were raised through the town of Londonderry. The agreement with Londonderry was revised in February of 2021. The agreement provides up to 500,000 gallons per day of wastewater service to the town of Londonderry. And among other things, the agreement requires that the town of Londonderry adopt and implement an industrial pretreatment program. It essentially just monitors the wastewater that comes into Derry to make sure it complies with state and federal regulations. In December of last year, the state conducted a compliance inspection of Londonderry's program and noted a couple of concerns. Those concerns were some definitions within the agreement were not defined. There were terms in the agreement that were not defined within the IMA. They were defined in our respective sewer use ordinances, but they weren't defined in the agreement itself. The second issue was that there wasn't a procedure in the agreement for resolving disputes other than the termination of the entire agreement, and that was a concern to the state. Thirdly, there was no provision for a periodic review, a joint review between Derry and Londonderry of the agreement, so they suggested that we add some language to that effect. And lastly, there was no clear definition of Londonderry's facilities that were subject to the agreement, so the Londonderry facilities that convey the wastewater into Derry. So to address those concerns, we've made some amendments to the agreement that are before you tonight. First, we added the definitions that are currently in our sewer use ordinance. We just referenced them in the IMA itself. That would be under Article 8, definitions on page 14. We also added an arbitration clause to the agreement. What we did was we took the language that town of Derry currently has in our wholesale water agreement with Manchester Water Works. We added that to the agreement, which provides for dispute resolution under the statutory provisions of RSA 542. That's included in a new section 2.8 on page 9 of the agreement. We added a provision for a joint meeting at least once every 5 years, which would correspond with the review and renewal of the intermunicipal agreement. We added that under Article 4 on page 13. And we added a description under Article 1, Section 1.5 of Londonderry's facilities. It basically shows where Londonderry's collection system is and where their facilities are in Derry that contribute and convey the wastewater into the Derry wastewater treatment plant. And there was a map, which was a new page 19 of the agreement. So essentially, they're just more editorial in nature, really no substance, just more clarification. So if there's any questions on those amendments, I'd be happy to answer them.
Councilor Ciarcello.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm assuming that we had our legal department review the arbitration agreement and whatnot.
That's why we adopted the current language we currently have in our agreement with Manchester Water Works. So it is based on state law, and it uses the American Arbitration Association. There would be an agreement on who we would use. If we couldn't agree, then it would automatically default to that agreement. So we didn't have the legal counsel review these specific amendments. They were just clarifications of existing language that we have already in our sewer use ordinance, we have in our wholesale water agreement, and then just a map of what's existing for facilities.
Okay. You wouldn't run it through Primex at all? Or?
Well, we went through that preliminary step years ago, and we developed a sewer ordinance there, so this is just a continuation of that practice.
Okay. I hadn't had a chance to look at the arbitration agreement, but, obviously my concerns are, we have a lot of people retiring soon. I don't want to age you, Tom, but when you leave, a lot of knowledge goes away. And when Dave leaves, you see what I'm saying? I just don't want to be caught by surprise 5 years down the road. So, thank you.
Anyone else? Councilman Cochran.
I'm assuming this has been reviewed between you and Londonderry, no issues?
That's correct, and these amendments were also sent to the state. Alexis up at DES, who conducted the compliance inspection, he approved of the amendments.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, if there are no other questions,
one
I'd...
quick question.
Go ahead. Whoop.
It's kind of a silly question. So the joint meeting every 5 years, is that the standard time frame? 5 years, is that, or is that just like
We
an
can meet as
arbitrary-
often. We had the language in the prior, before we amended the agreement in 2021, and we would meet periodically on issues as they would arise, but we didn't feel it was necessary to put language in there, but the state wanted us to make certain that we did so, rather than commit ourselves to meeting monthly or quarterly. We said we'll meet once right prior to the renewal of the agreement, but we certainly can meet anytime for any reason before that.
Okay.
And I would assume with the development going next door, you guys will be meeting more often
Correct.
as things come on. Mr. Chairman, if there are no other questions, I'd like to read resolution number 2023-042.
Right
Seeing
ahead.
no other questions? To amend the intermunicipal agreement with the town of Londonderry to provide wastewater services. Whereas section 5.1 of the town charter designates the town council as the governing and legislative body of the town, and whereas the Department of Public Works has maintained a lengthy relationship with the town of Londonderry by providing wastewater disposal services, and whereas the town council approved the revised intermunicipal agreement with Londonderry pursuant to resolution number 2021-15, and whereas the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services has requested amendments to the agreement to include definitions, periodic review period, and a dispute resolution process, now therefore be it resolved in council that the town administrator and the town council chair are hereby authorized to execute the intermunicipal agreement pursuant to RSA 149I-4 between the towns of Derry and Londonderry to continue providing wastewater services by adding definitions, a periodic review period, and dispute resolution process. This resolution shall take effect immediately upon its passage, hopefully adopted June 20th, 2023.
Second.
Okay, motion by Counsel McEachran, second by Counsel Spencer. On the motion, Counsel Churchillo.
Yes.
Counsel Spencer.
Yes.
Counsel Katsoukaris.
Yes.
Counsel Flood.
Yes.
Counsel Granessi.
Yes.
Counsel McEachran.
Yes.
The chair votes yes, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. All right, now I'll jump down to item number 23-74, resolution 2023-044, to adopt the town council's fiscal year 24 action plan. Town Administrator Dave Carroll presenting.
Thank you. In your packet, you have a summary of the consolidation of goals with strategies, objectives, and tactics. This is really a culmination of all the input received from the council, and they've been essentially collected into 7 different categories. The Exit 4A corridor, which is going to be a significant issue moving forward. The Route 28 South Corridor with the federal grant we received to extend the sewer, looking at zoning. Completing the recreation assets with the bond the council passed about 3 or 4 years ago. That is moving its way towards completion. There's also was a request to look at housing from 2 councils regarding workforce housing with utilities, so we have a couple ideas on that. Economic development is really a catch-all to what we're looking at is to complete the Abbott Court project, to review all zoning, look at empty lots, which we have been doing for building those out, and also Bev continues to work to attract a hotel here in Derry. Public facilities, to construct the fire station project, and also look at the building study for town facilities, which is pretty much the police station. And we've done some of that work about 1.5 years ago, and we'll look and refresh that review. Also in financial management, to look at vets credits on a more graduated basis. Right now, if the council ever decided to issue it to all veterans, there's only a short 3-year window on the statute, again, on an equal par with those folks who served during times of war. So that would require some state legislative action. Also, continue the migration away from use of unsustainable revenues for recurring capital investments. And also talk about the discussion, essentially having a joint CIP process with the school district in Pinkerton, although, we have separate levels of government. That coordination may be helpful to make sure that we minimize the impact on the tax rate to the greatest extent possible. And the last one is just a number of catch-all goals. So just for the council's information is that any goals not completed from previous fiscal years, we'll continue with those through fruition unless there's a council action to abandon or withdraw from those goals. So looking at these goals, we would request a resolution 23044 to adopt the action plan for FY '24.
Okay,
Mr.
Questions?
Chairman, if there are no questions, I'll read the resolution.
right ahead.
I would like to approve Resolution 2023-44 to adopt the Town Council's FY24 action plan. Whereas Section 5.1 of the Charter vests the Town Council with the powers of legislative and governing bodies, and whereas the Town Council has established an action plan to assure that public funds are expended in a manner which reflects the community priorities, and whereas the action plan results from the Town Council's interactions with the public, town boards and commissions, staff, and other stakeholders, now therefore be it resolved that the attached 2024 action plan is hereby adopted and the town administrator is directed to report back to the council on a quarterly basis with updates on the plan's implementation. Resolution shall take effect immediately upon its passage, effective June 20th, 2023.
Second?
Okay, motion by Counselor McEachran, second by Counselor Spencer. On the motion, Counselor Cherichello.
Yes.
Counselor Spencer.
Yes.
Counselor Katsoukaris.
Yes.
Counselor Flood.
Yes.
Counselor Ganassi.
Yes.
Counselor McEachran.
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Motion carries 7-0. Item number 2375, Resolution 2023-047, to authorize the restoration of involuntary merged lots. Planning Director George Sioris will be presenting.
Good evening, members of the
Evening,
council.
George.
Good evening. Hopefully this will be an easy one. This is just primarily to, there was a state law that changed back in 2010 that said that it was mandatory that towns had to put lots back that were involuntary merged by the town back prior to 2010. We had several. So tonight, we're just looking at two parcels at 2 Bowers Road. The owner is Sean Moreau. You have a staff report from Mark Jarzanowski as well as Steve Hamilton. The planning board approved this merger last week, our last planning board meeting. So tonight, we just have to take action, the council does, to put the lots back to put what they were. As you can see in the staff report, we looked at the planning and assessing file. This plan goes back to 1963. There's a house on the lot. You see the plan where the lot will be, the line will be back. So based on that, this is an administrative thing you have to do. It's a state law change, so we'd recommend that you approve it. Put the 2 lots back.
Questions?
Mr. Chairman, if there are no questions, I'd like to read resolution number 2023-047.
Quick question, if you
Sorry.
don't mind. I
Counselor Cherichello.
apologize. I just, George, did you say it's a residential lot?
Yeah, there's one single-family house there now.
Okay.
The new owner is Sean Moreau. I met him, he purchased it, so there is a single-family house there
Yeah.
currently.
All right, I just wasn't sure if it was a business.
No, single-family.
Counselor Ganassi.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to read resolution number 2023-47 to authorize the restoration of involuntary merged lots. Whereas Section 5.1 of the Town Charter establishes the Town Council as the legislative and governing body of the town, and whereas the town is required to comply with state statutes, and whereas RSA 67:39-AA requires the town to allow lots previously merged by the community without the consent of the owner or opportunity upon request to restore the properties back to the original individual lots. And whereas the lots under consideration meet all applicable statutory requirements, now therefore be it resolved in council that pursuant to RSA 674:39-AA, the restoration of map lot 02-057 back to its previous pre-involuntary merged status consisting of lots number 2 and 3 as shown on the plan recorded at the Rockingham County Registry of Deeds, surveyed by D.L. Kimball dated March 18, 1963, is hereby granted, adopted June 20th, 2023.
Second?
Motion by Counselor Ganassi, second by Counselor Spencer. On the motion, Counselor Cherichello.
Yes.
Counselor Spencer.
Yes.
Counselor Katsoukaris.
Yes.
Counselor Flood.
Yes.
Counselor Ganassi.
Yes.
Counselor McEachran.
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Motion
you very
carries
much.
7-0. Thank you, George.
Thank you. Just for the record, I have to say to Brian, I have Tom beat, Tom Kerr. I had my anniversary last week, Brian, 39 years, so.
Wow.
I have a couple years on Tom, so.
So does that mean Tom stays for a few more years, or? Okay, all right.
How many years did he say that? 39.
Because he's been here less. All right, 23-76, Resolution 2023-048, to authorize the use of bond proceeds for Hood Park facility improvements. Mike Fowler presenting.
All right, good evening. This is an appropriate topic. I just heard the discussion about the council's goal setting. So just part of this is to be as an update. Part of it is to look at repurposing some of the funds. But just to kind of start the story from the beginning, in March 2020, the town initiated the UNH study that was presented to town council, solicited several hundred pieces of feedback from various stakeholders. And what came out of that was a number of different recommendations to upgrade the facilities in the community. We had a $1.8 million bond that was appropriated at the time, and that bond, or those proceeds, were going to be used for the purposes of meeting some of those goals within the study. So initially, there were some setups to replace the Alexander Carr Lodge. It was a fairly significant cost to tear that down. Once the study was completed, everybody took a step back and said, you know, let's kind of take a broader view, which I think was a very prudent move, to then reset the priorities. So since then, we've talked to a lot of the different stakeholders. We've talked to the council on a number of occasions about what those priorities and what those goals are. And so tonight, what we're looking to do is to designate the final $500,000 of that. But what I'd like to do is to briefly go through where we have gone thus far, just to kind of give a broad spectrum as to what we have accomplished. And so we kicked off and spent about $75,000 for a study for the West Running Brook field. So if there's a day at which we want to make a large soccer, baseball field combined, that would be a process. You do need at least $2.5 million. What was the estimate that came back? But the engineering is done. The environmental permitting is done. So that is a project you could pull off the shelf. Dave and I have looked at times at various funding mechanisms. We haven't found anything yet that gives us that level of funding, but we're going to continue to look as we always do. You spent some funds to help complete and augment the rail trail going over Hood Pond. While that project was going on, we upgraded part of the Don Ballpark playground. We obviously spent some funds towards the Alexander's Carr skate park, and that augmented funds from the trust. We also paved Ryder Field. That parking lot area, as you know, we had come back here on the ordinance recently. That area has been paved. We have also just kicked off the the Alexander Carr Lodge renovation. So that was not the full-blown demolition. This is just a siding repair and a deck repair and some of the more critical elements that we should really spruce that up. But even that came in under what our original estimates were, so that'll be part of the calibration tonight. At a meeting back in March, we sat down and talked to Derry Little League, and we have put a fence up on the softball field at Vets Field, which has been a huge improvement out there. And there'll be some work in left field to build a parking lot out there. And so we want to continue with the momentum on that. Beyond that, we also had talked about the work to put the lighting at Vets and O'Hara. So originally, we had a $75,000 slot, if you will, to put lights at Vets Field. And then what ended up happening was we also said at the same time, let's do O'Hara. So we get some pricing, and so that appears to be $125,000 plus or minus. So we're finalizing the numbers on that, but we have a contractor that we are ready to initiate a bid with and get rolling on that project to deliver by late fall 2023. So tonight, what we'll be looking to do is to seek to utilize $125,000 of those bond proceeds. To cover that cost, we're going to recommend that we reduce the Alexander Carr Lodge, which was originally $150,000. The bids came in well under that, at like $85,000. We may have some ancillary items we need to finish, but we're going to reduce that by $50,000. And then there was another project we had suggested to put lights or to replace lighting at Don Ballpark on a couple of those fields, and those prices came way out of whack, and so we decided to mothball that. You'd be reducing that by $75,000. So the net of adding the lights at O'Hara and removing those other two projects would be a net zero. And then the final piece of the equation we'd be looking to do is there's $500,000 of unspent bond revenues that we'd like to purpose towards the Hood Park project. So I was here, I think in March, and discussed our bid that we'd put out. We had a great design, splash pad, pickleball court, pavilion, playground, and we were looking to try to kick that off in a bid in April. And unfortunately, 6 vendors came in, took the plans out, and nobody put a bid in on it. So I'm not sure if that's a reflection of the complexity of the project or a reflection of just there's probably better jobs that they can take, everybody's busy, et cetera, et cetera. So we took a step back, and I reached out to the vendor who would be providing just the playground equipment, the splash pad, all of that hardware. And the pricing for that alone was $400,000. So our budget was $500K to start. So to implement all of those items within there, it looks like 2 things. Number one, the town, the Public Works Department, will be serving as the general contractor. And we have the horsepower to do that. We may have to get some contracted help, but back in the day, DPW installed the existing splash pad that's down at Don Ball Park. So we have the knowledge, we have the folks with that expertise. The companies that provide these particular items, the playgrounds and the splash pad, they have technical assistance, and they would be furnishing it, delivering it to the site, and then we could pay to have them install it, which we're considering. All the other items at the cost that we're looking at, even to if you take $400,000, that only leaves me with about $100,000 remaining to spend on the other improvements. You still have to build a pickleball court. You're still looking at some lights. You're still looking at some security improvements. So the ask tonight is to take the remaining $500,000 and to supplement what has already been designated from the TIF funds to make $1 million pot of money to accomplish all of those items. And the idea would be, if we go out of here tonight with an affirmative vote in that direction, my department would be reaching out to the vendors and trying to get those contracts secured and rolling forward on trying to get some of these things done as the 2023 calendar year closes out and pushing into 24. So basically, that would expend all of the existing funds within that $1.8 million bond proceeds. So that's essentially what we're looking to do tonight, is to shuffle around 2 projects to move forward and 2 projects to pull back from.
Questions? Councilman Geckman.
I think obviously Hood Park needs to be renovated, and there needs to be some work down there. Excuse me, a lot of projects going on down there. I know the Bensons are moving one of their buildings over on the other side of the pond. I really, we got to do something down there, make it nicer. Quite frankly, very taken back that we're off by 50% here from $500,000 to $1 million. I guess my preference would be to do the $500,000 and ask, what can we do? Do we really need the splash pad, and are we doing better, doing all the other attributes and not having a splash pad there? I mean, that's a big chunk of change. Have we done some demographic studies as to potential utilization downtown? Because we do have that massive splash pad at Don Ball. It gets used a lot. Obviously, some people will stay there. Some people would obviously use this splash pad. That's a lot of money for a splash pad, and it's not a year-round use. It's a very limited time frame, June, July, and August. I'd almost rather see the $500,000 spent on everything else we have to do down in Hood Park, including safety measures and things of that nature, because that area is very tight with a lot of homes down there. Not so much as the Don Ball Park, which has that one street, and everybody's a little further away. I mean, Hood Park is literally surrounded by homes. I'm a little more concerned about the residents down there and what's gonna happen. And that $400,000 for a splash pad just seems like a lot of money, and I could use that $500,000 to do all the other projects maybe. Is there some way we could take another look at this and see what we have to do? I certainly don't have any issue with the $500,000. It's bonded, it's there, the money's there, but then to go after another $500,000, because quite frankly, I'd rather use the TIF money downtown for economic development. We're talking about building a parking garage and all this other stuff that we're gonna have to pay for. to me, that's a better use of that additional $500,000, and to sharpen our pencils and look at the design here. That's my personal opinion.
So I can tell you the pricing for the $400,000 was directly from, the vendor. And roughly speaking, it was about $250,000 was a splash pad, and then the other parts of it was the playground equipment. So there's two parts to that add up to $400,000. But I certainly understand your point in terms of, one of the things that was identified, I believe, in the study was to provide some downtown options for the population that lived nearby and maybe didn't have the transportation to go out to Don Ball. I also think that one of the things that was a key attribute to enhancing Hood Park was the fact of if you could change the demographic perhaps a little bit where it was more family oriented as opposed to, a teenager only or something of that nature, you maybe would have a better situation in terms of vandalism and things of that nature. But, as part of this process, and as I always say, this is the council's money, and certainly, if they're looking to meet the needs of the community and meet the financial needs, we can adjust that however, and if the feedback is to look at the pickleball courts and the lighting and the security improvements as opposed to that, we can make some adjustments on the fly.
I mean, the other feedback, obviously, Hood Pond has a pond. There's already a water feature there. Don Ball has no water, so the splash pad kind of makes sense there. So we're adding something literally to Hood Pond that's already there,
No
which is a
swimming.
water feature.
They're not
swim in
swimming
it,
in
though.
Hood Pond.
Can't swim in that pond?
The bacteria,
Bacteria hits are too high.
it's off limits now.
When did the off limits happen? I know people used to
10,
swim there
12 years ago?
About 10 years ago.
Huh?
Yeah, so it's,
Scratch that statement, obviously.
yeah,
I used to see people swim there all the time.
yeah, no.
Not anymore, honey.
Counselor Churchill.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad that Councilor McEachran brought it up. So I'm just a little bit concerned that 3 or 4 years ago, we made Hood Park a priority, the council at that time did. And there's been a lot of other activity around, but nothing at Hood. So I'm a little bit upset with that, but let's just move on from that. I do think it's a good idea to do the $500,000 now and then use the other balance from the TIF, because here's the deal. This is really to enhance downtown. If we're gonna develop Abbott Court, there'll be people that'll utilize the splash pad over there, because you're gonna have a lot of younger families over there, as well as 19 Elm Street. If that gets redeveloped into housing, there'll be additional people in the downtown to be able to use all these facilities, the Hood Park and the things that are planned for it. So it's not a full splash pad, it's a mini. So, right, am I correct, Mike?
You are correct.
Yeah, so it's not a full-scale one, but anyway, I would go with that route. Like I said, I've been a little upset that Hood Pond is, it's gone through the no bid, so nothing's been done. I'd like to see that fountain in the middle of the pond going and all that stuff. So I would support what you're looking for here, and hopefully we can move it as quickly along as we can.
Counselor Grassy. Were you done, Counselor Churchill?
Yeah, I'm all done.
All right, Counselor Spencer.
I just have two quick
You
questions.
go first.
I just want to ask you, just to make sure I'm clear, the TIF proceeds part, we've already appropriated that, correct? So that's not that we would be taking and reassigning, it's already done, so it's already going there. Okay, that's what I thought, I just want to clarify. And my only other question is, it's with some big pricing jumps already, how can, if we approved this tonight and you moved forward, how confident are we that these prices aren't going to have big changes before we actually get moving?
I mean, before I finalized some numbers with the vendor about 2 weeks ago, just prior to submitting this staff report, as with everything, I talk to vendors, they talk about, if you put your order in by X date, we can hold this price, but 45 days out, we don't know, we can't, give you a guarantee. So that's it, that's across the board. That's pipe, that's, machinery, that's everything. But we'll do the best we can to expedite and lock the prices in if we are given the authorization to repurpose these bond numbers.
So you do have, for some of them, you have that kind of if it's within this window, then it would be this price. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Counselor Grassy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Mr. Fowler. I mean, we have the money, it's already been allocated. They've already done a ton of work at Hood Plaza. I wouldn't do half, micmac it, do a little bit, because it'll never get done. Might as well just do it, if we can do it all at once, get it all done at once. And I agree that people in the area will be using that, and that might take some relief off of Don Ball. Because I see on social media and everything, everybody's complaining, Don Ball, you can't get in there. And I think, completing Hood Park would alleviate that. So I would agree with this.
Okay, Councilman McEachran.
So a question on Council Spence's, are you saying that the $500,000 for the TIF is already allocated for Hood Park?
That is correct. That was an action well back at the beginning of this process.
So that had already been allocated for this. And then there's an additional $500,000 remaining in the bond that was already issued.
Yep.
So you basically want that extra $500,000, so what projects aren't getting done? Because you originally wanted $500,000 for Hood, for Alexander, for Hood Pond, which you had already allocated, but now you figured out it's gonna cost $1 million. So you're moving $500,000 from the proceeds of the bond. What was that allocated for?
Nothing. So one of the things from the very beginning, when we developed this back, when the bond was sold, we actually hadn't done the study yet. There were 3 projects that initially kicked this off. We had $1.5 million to do a brand-new Alexander Carr Lodge. Tear it down, build 5,000 square feet, and really, spruce that up. That was a big project. $200,000 for some lighting at one of the fields at Don Ball, and then there was a third project for $100,000, and I can't quite remember what that was, but neither here nor there. Those were the 3 projects. The study went on, and the council at the time gave the direction to let's segment what we're doing, and they shelved the project for the Alexander Carr rebuild. So what had happened is we went around, this came in segments. And so where we are right now, after the vote of the council in March of 2023 to move forward on the Little League items, and so when that was done, we were sitting at $500,000, and I think we all discussed that at some point we would come back to talk about how we wanted to designate the final $500,000. So that was sitting at 1.3 million designated with 1.8 as your total bond.
So we're not razzing the ski hill anymore, but we are renovating it.
We are renovating it at a cost of $85,000.
So that, the cost of razzing it has now been reallocated to Hood,
Right.
essentially.
Right. That's when we had the public studies, right? We had the UNH came in and did a.
Well,
did-
yeah,
did the
I'm sorry,
public-
some of
oh.
this predates me, so I just
So,
wanna make
so
sure,
we, just to take a step back, so we had, the council at the time, we wanted to do the Alexander Carr Park,
Yeah,
like
we
we
want to
just,
razz
like
the
Mike
building,
mentioned.
paint it.
And then before we had that money spent, we went out and had UNH come in and do their study. We had the public forums and whatnot. People came in and Hood Park revitalization was kind of came from that, plus not to mention the economic development aspect of trying to get the downtown developed and have the attraction and that was the thought process at the time, and it's still been carrying over. And to kind of Chiarichello's point, since then, other things have come in and kind of taken precedence over it. And this has kind of been left in limbo. So I do agree, I acknowledge your sentiment about, that money, there's other things we potentially could do, but it's a valid, no, but it was a valid point, and I think, just to touch on that, but this is something that's been in the works for 5 years, 4 years, 5 years at
Well, no,
least.
but if the money was allocated for other recreational purposes and all you do, so that's, I'm just coming from,
Right.
Just got here in March, right?
Yep.
So if the money was already previously allocated to other purposes, like the ski hill, and now instead of razzing the ski hill, we're renovating it, most of that money
Right.
is now just being reallocated. It's
Right.
not, we're not getting essentially new money.
No.
We're not losing out on other projects, right? So that's kind of where I'm coming from. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, you're moving $500,000 around. What am I missing on here? What element am I missing? And the element I'm missing is, we're not razzing a building anymore and raising a new one. We're just
Right.
renovating one, which saves you several $100,000, and that's where the money is now. But I do share Brian's concern that obviously costs have gone through the roof here, and I kind of wish Hood Pond got done a long time ago, because now ultimately it's costing us a lot more than it would have years ago. Because I can remember even before being on here, these conversations about Hood Pond going on, so it's been a while. But I appreciate the clarity, and I appreciate the patience of my fellow councilors while I kind of work through the math,
valid.
while I work through the mathematics here, so.
And I believe we have to use that bond money because it's a time-sensitive thing,
Right,
correct?
right, and that's the other point, it's time
No,
sensitive.
no, I'm just-
And a lot of it too, so at the time, the council at the time, we were looking at Alexander Carr, and we had that public session.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we kind of realized we were kind of going down the wrong track, so to speak, and we were redirects that fared very low on the list from the public perception of what they wanted to get done. So we reinvested it back this way. Another part of it, I think a big chunk of the change came from was not going through with the West Running Brook project.
That's correct.
That was a big chunk right there that we were gonna put a lot towards that field.
That
the-
1.8,
the universal field.
Chunk of the 1.8,
But
gotcha.
then,
Okay.
but then that just kept going up and up and up and up because of ledge, the blasting and the lighting, and there was so many things, and so we just kind of put that on the shelf.
Yeah, because I know the West Running Brook project came around years ago, the last time I was on the council, and we had talked about ball fields. Michael, you were sitting where you were today, and we talked about that, and it was
And it just skyrocketed.
several $1 million for us to knock out the ledge, and went, okay, that goes to the right.
Right.
And so I'm kind of surprised that even came back again, because as far as my knowledge goes, ledge doesn't move.
Right.
So I would imagine if it costs us several $1 million in 2003 or 4, it's gonna be a hell of a lot more today.
Different councilors have different priorities, let me just
Right.
put it that way.
It's
Right.
it's still ledge. So thank you very much, and I appreciate my fellow councilors letting me do my mathematical gymnastics.
Absolutely. And to the West Running Brook point, so you said the environmental appraisals has already been done, it's on the shelf. How long is that good for?
5 years. So we attained the alteration of terrain permit, I believe, in the middle of 2022. So we still have about 3.5, almost 4 years before the expiration of that permit. And you can get an extension of time if you had that need to. You don't have to reapply, but everything's been done. You have a great design. You also have the AOT permit. So those two hurdles have been cleared, and it could just be put out to bid and refreshed pretty quickly if that ever became an opportunity for the town.
Okay. And then I'm not sure if this is for you or for the town administrator, and as far as the whole Pinkerton and the CTE program, I know there was going to be a collaboration.
Yep.
Where does that stand right now with this whole revitalization part of
So
it?
that's part of this as well. I think I neglected to mention this. We've had a number of discussions with Mark Broussard. We've done some educational sessions with them this past fall, engaged them in looking at the property. And so ultimately what will happen, as you all are familiar with Hood Park, as you go beyond the bridge, that whole back area is going to be an arboretum, a natural area, and we'll be engaging with the CTE students. There'll be a new group that'll be, entering this year. But basically, those trails will be enhanced, and then they can be spruced up for, whatever the purposes that they see fit. But we've been engaged with them from the very get-go on that.
And it's still on
that'll
board.
continue through
Yep.
this repurposing, so that doesn't change.
Right. So for those at home and in the audience, the vision at the time of the council and with the CTE program, getting involved, the agricultural aspect and the forestry and whatnot, and the arboretum, the splash pad, the pickleball, the rink, is to have a little bit of something for everybody. And that's to make it all pretty all-inclusive for anyone in down that, not just with the splash pad, you're gonna draw the younger crowd, but obviously the older crowd gonna have the rink there, right, and the pickleball courts and the rail trail right there, so, well, you can, but, right, so is that accurate?
That is accurate, and I think that came from the community surveys. So I think, the key thing to talk about here is that, things have shifted a little bit based on the priorities of the individual, governing body and whatnot. But in the end, the core of that study laid out, it's a great location, it's a great place. Let's try to get a little bit for all ages, and that would be well suited for the community. So that's what this accomplishes.
Great, thank you. Yeah, anyone else have any contemplating on it? No? All right.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve resolution number 2023-048 to authorize the use of bond proceeds for Hood Park facility improvements. Whereas Section 5.1 of the Town Charter designates the Town Council as the governing and legislative body of the town, and whereas the Council previously authorized a supplemental appropriation for recreation facilities pursuant to Resolution 2018-067, And whereas the town council previously authorized the town administrator to implement the recreation facilities plan pursuant to resolutions 2020-031 and 2023-014. And whereas a combination of market conditions, prioritization of projects to be completed, and the amount of available funds require a reallocation of resources among those projects, now therefore be it resolved in council that the town administrator is hereby authorized to implement the following. 1, designate $125,000 to furnish lighting at O'Hara Field. 2, reduce the initial allocation to Alexander Carr Lodge renovations by $50,000. 3, rescind implementation of lighting upgrades at Don Ball Park in the amount of $75,000. 4, obligate the sum of $500,000 from the Recreation Facilities Bond for the completion of the Hood Park project.
Second.
Okay, motion by Counsel Spencer, second by Counsel Katsoukaris. On the motion, Counsel Chercello.
Yes.
Counsel Spencer.
Yes.
Counsel Katsoukaris.
Yes.
Counsel Flood.
Yes.
Counsel Granessi.
Yes.
Counsel McEachran.
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you,
Thank
Mike.
you.
Appreciate it. Item 2377, Resolution 2023-049, to approve the purchase of land on English Range Road for conservation and water division purposes. Mr. Karen.
This has been a project which we've been working on since the beginning of the year. The Conservation Commission has been in negotiations with the prospective purchase of the Don Ball property over on English Range Road. As you recall, the council previously authorized us to sign a letter of intent to purchase the property. The council also approved the resolution to appropriate $100,000 for a potential water tank site, which was identified by Tom Carrier and his team. And also, state law requires that the council approve conservation purposes by the Conservation Commission. So this resolution brings finality to this project. It grants the Conservation Commission permission to acquire almost 43 acres at 82 English Range Road, and authorized me to execute all necessary documents to bring this project to completion.
Nice. Any questions?
No, I can read the resolution if there are no questions.
Nope.
Resolution number 2023-049, to approve the purchase of land on English Range Road for conservation and water division purposes. Whereas Section 5.1 of the Town Charter designates the Town Council as the governing and legislative body of the town, and whereas the Conservation Commission has indicated interest in conserving 42.7 acres at 82 English Range Road, and whereas the location of this parcel has been identified by the Water Division as preferable for potential future location of a water tank, and whereas the Derry Conservation Commission has authorized its participation in the conservation of this land by pledging $335,000 towards its acquisition, and whereas the Town Council under Resolution 2023-012 has appropriated $100,000 for the potential water tank site, now therefore be it resolved in council that the Town Council, pursuant to authorization granted under RSA 36A4, I hereby authorize the Conservation Commission's acquisition of 42.7 acres at 82 English Range Road, and authorize the town administrator to execute all necessary documents on behalf of the town. The resolution shall take effect immediately upon its passage, should be adopted June 20th, 2023.
Motion by Counsel McEachran, second by Counsel Katsoukaris. On the motion, Counsel Chercello.
Yes.
Counsel Spencer.
Yes.
Counsel Katsoukaris.
Yes.
Counsel Flood.
Yes.
Counsel Granessi.
Yes.
Counsel McEachran.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Motion carries 7-0. Lastly, item number 2378, Resolution 2023-050, to approve the placement of a historical marker commemorating Alan Shepard. Mr. Karen will also be presenting.
Okay, late last week, we received a request from a resident to petition the state to put a historic marker over by the Shepherd property. And you'll note in the staff report, there are already 4 historical markers identifying other areas in town. And that's really just a small but a pretty important part of our economic development, bringing people to town. So this would authorize to move forward, and if the council so votes, then we transfer the project to Public Works and the Heritage Commission to make sure that the placement is historically sensitive, and also that it's done correctly as far as construction, so.
Questions? Counsel Chercello.
Makes sense.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I like the idea. The only concern I have, and I don't know, is if people want to pull over to the side, is there places where you can park to take a look and read the marker? I know it may be small, but do you see what I'm saying? I mean, it's on 28, it's on Hampstead Road, right?
Yes, that's one of the issues that is the next step, whereby the state will meet with our staff of Public Works and also with the Heritage Commission to make sure that those issues are addressed and it's put into the proper area. If those issues can be worked out, then the sign would not go up.
Okay. Like I said, I like the idea, I just have some concerns there.
Right.
Anyone else?
Well, given that you're gonna look into the parking, like Brian said, I am gonna make a resolution number 2023-050 to authorize the placement of a historical marker honoring Alan Shepard. Whereas Section 5.1 of the Town Charter designates the Town Council as the governing and legislative body of the town, and whereas Alan Shepard is one of Derry's most famous citizens, having graduated from Pinkerton Academy, and was the first American in space and the fifth to walk on the moon, whereas the state of New Hampshire sponsors a historical highway marker program which illustrates the depth and complexity of the state's history and the people who made it, and whereas the town has received a request of supportive placement of a marker commemorating Mr. Shepherd's time in Derry, now therefore be it resolved in council that the town council hereby endorses the placement of a historical marker on East Derry Road at the site of Alan Shepard's birthplace. Resolution shall take effect immediately upon its passage, June 20th, 2023.
Second.
Motion by Counselor McEachran, second by Counselor Spencer. On the motion, Counselor Cherichello.
Yes.
Counselor Spencer.
Yes.
Counselor Katsakoris.
Yes.
Counselor Flood.
Yes.
Counselor Canesi.
Yes.
Counselor McEachran.
Yes.
The chair votes yes, motion carries 7-0. Comments, liaison reports, anything?
Yeah,
Flood.
I just want everyone to know that on July 22nd at the Boys and Girls Club, we'll be having a large community event, live music and entertainment for kids of all ages and all families. It'll be our 12th event in 6 years, I believe. And it's July 22nd at the Boys and Girls Club. It'll run from 12 noon to about 8:30 that night. It'll be nonstop, and it'll be something there for everyone. It's free to attend, and so you can look it up on social media or just reach out to me, or email or something. I can get you more information. But please mark your calendars and consider yourself invited.
Cool. Thank you.
Counselor Katsakoris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couple if I can please. First, the opening of the new liquor store. The ribbon cutting was today. The governor was there and he spoke, the town administrator was there, many of the councilors and state reps were there. And, no, it's a good thing for the town. Just be careful, no DWIs, that's all. And, yes, don't buy liquor, but drink it at home. Anyway, so that was there and it was nice. Anyway, the second thing is, there was an incident a few days ago on Bryan Avenue. And I've gotten calls from people there asking if they would put up a caution sign. The police were called with drawn guns and the people were asked, anyway, there was an incident there and it was serious. And there's several children there that ride bikes on the street and that were around there. And I've gotten calls from parents asking if they could put a sign up saying caution children. There's quite a few children on that street. And with that
Highway Safety
incident that
Committee.
happened, plus that, I would like to see if we can't get some kind of a sign on Bryan Avenue that says caution children. So we'll discuss that. So those are the two things, the liquor store and the upset on Bryan Ave. Bryan Ave.
No. Anyone else? Counselor Flood.
You did right? Did you create a problem?
Counselor Flood.
That is a problem then. Also, just next town council meeting, July 11th.
July 11th.
We, with the support of the rest of the council and Dave and Sheila, the town will be declaring also July 22nd, Survivors of Suicide Day. We'll be reading the proclamation at that town meeting. And if there are any out there who are survivors of suicide and they want to be part of this town meeting, Owen will probably be taking a picture and, documenting it. So please come to that meeting. And if you have any other questions, once again, just email me. I'll take care of it. But I want to thank them for their support in that, getting that done.
Thanks for mentioning that again, putting forethought out there. Anyone else?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, motion to adjourn by Council McGuckin, second by Council Spencer. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.